hit record now.
Okay, great. I'm going to probably give it 2 more minutes, so let's start with the case study. We have, okay, cool, got about 15 people in now. Right, so guys, if you're just joining, in the chat box, I've just sent a message to you guys. I would love just 3 pieces of information from everyone. I'd love your name, I'd love where you're calling, I would love your email address. You don't have to share this with everyone. I think you have the option to kind of just share this privately with me. That's absolutely fine. The email address, because we're going to be creating a lot of free content. I just want to make sure that you guys get all of our free content. So the free content is really about coaching and things like assessments, program design, etc. So if you don't mind me
And your mic doesn't
sharing that,
work.
that'd be fantastic. Okay. Yes, Payway just said that.
Thank you. Um, hmm. Can
It's
you
fine.
guys hear me all right
It's
now?
good
Now it's
now.
okay?
Yeah.
Was it okay at the start?
It's like on and off. At first I
Okay,
thought it was
good.
my AirPods, but
Okay.
Kind of going like loud and clear, and then it sounds like you're quite far away. I'm sure.
Okay. Let me try and sort this out. Okay. If you guys, if I start cutting off, can you someone just give me like a down thumb signal? Sort of. Is it okay at the moment? Okay, great. Okay, I'm gonna get started, team, because we have 1 hour and I normally talk a lot. So trying to get this done in an hour. Oh God, okay, thumbs down. Not good. Hang on.
I get rid of my headphones.
Okay, any different? Better? Like actually better? Great. These are fake headphones I bought down the street. Wouldn't recommend it. Okay, let's get into it. Right. Team, can everyone see my screen? Okay, right. So tonight is okay. We're gonna have people just kind of coming into this call as we go along. So that's all good. Let me just make this a little smaller. Get you guys out of the way. Okay, great. So tonight is we're going through a case study. I've done these before, and the case study always changes. The whole idea here tonight, guys, is to basically walk you through the process that I would typically go through when writing a training program for a client. So using a case study is good because it gives us at least some data points for us to work with. So we've basically got an assessment here. We've got some kind of key findings from a client that we'll go through quickly. And then we're going to use those key findings based on the goals of the client and write a training program. And this is going to be an express step-by-step process. And hopefully by the end of this call in 1 hour, we will have written a training program. Now, the way I'm going to do it is I'm basically going to narrate my thought process as I go through it. So you guys are going to hear kind of what I'm thinking about, the decisions that we're kind of going back and forth between and why I land on certain things. So if you guys have questions, I really recommend just at the end, kind of write your question down. We can even put it in the chat box if you don't want to forget it. And I'll make sure I go through all those questions at the end. I think it's really important to understand that when it comes to programming, there is no right or wrong way to do it. There's 1,000 ways to skin the cat. And what that means, there's 1,000 different ways to write a training program that can all land on the same result. We can achieve the same outcome. So it's really important that you guys also challenge me. If there's something that I did and you're like, I'm not sure I really agree with that, or I'd like some clarification on that, that's exactly what this call's about. And that's why it's a webinar and not just a recording for you guys to watch. So use this opportunity to definitely ask me questions. Okay, so what we're going to do tonight, we are going to introduce a case study in just a second, post it on Instagram, but I'm going to assume that not everyone saw that. So I'll kind of take you guys through it. Once we've introduced a case study, we're then going to go and create a GPS. Now I want to talk about what a GPS is, but basically it's a very first step that we have to do when it comes to structuring a training program. And it stands for general, priorities, and structure. And I'm going to take you through a specific GPS for this client. Once we've written a GPS, we're actually going to write at least 1 week of the training program, but we might actually have time to actually write all 4 weeks. So this is a 4-week program that we stipulated. And at the end, we'll go through questions. Sound good, team? Love it. Okay, so let's start by introducing our case study. Thank you, Meg, who's on this call, who kind of pitched this case study forward. So here's our client. Our client doesn't have a name. Let's give our client a name. We're going to call our client John. So John is a male. He's 40 years old. Training age. He's completely new to training. So when we talk about training age, it's how many consistent years of strength and conditioning has this client got. So if someone has been, every now and then going through, going for a run, or maybe they go to a commercial gym and they kind of, do a circuit around the machines every now and then, for me, that doesn't really contribute to someone's training age. When I talk about training age, it's consistently following a training program where you're working towards a goal. So we've got a client here who's completely new to training. We're looking to complete a 4-week training program, and we're doing 2 sessions per week. Cool. I'm going to ask Meg, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions in a second. Okay, let's move on. The goals of John. He has 4 main goals. He wants to lose an additional 40 kilograms by the end of the year. Okay, that's a lot of weight. Obviously, a big question I'm going to ask straight away is that possible? We've got 12 months to lose 40 kilograms. If I do some really quick maths, that means we're going to have to go 40 divided by 12. That means we're going to be losing weight at a rate of 3.3 kilograms a month if we were to do that, steadily. Now, is that impossible? I'd say no, it's not impossible, but it's also probably a little bit on the fast end when it comes to weight loss. I'm sure we've all seen shows like, The Biggest Loser, where people lose, a really large amount of body fat and weight in really short amounts of time. But, the law of adaptation means that if we're losing weight too fast, the body's metabolic responses can't keep up with that weight loss. And, we can't kind of run into all sorts of problems down the line. So one question I'm definitely going to put straight away to John is, okay, this number of 40 kilograms, where does that come from? I think, maybe a bit of education around that as well. What's realistically healthy weight loss that's going to allow us to, achieve a weight loss goal without running into potential issues down the line. Okay, next, desire to stop taking Ozempic by summer 2025. So Ozempic is obviously a new drug that's kind of come onto the market. It's pretty well researched, and it's basically, it's being sold and packaged as a weight loss drug, but really one of the biggest things that it does, it suppresses appetite, right? So when we take it, it basically reduces our hunger cravings quite substantially. And at the moment, it's not looking like the side effects are all that bad. And so people are getting really rapid weight loss results with it. That's why, it's making a big splash in the market right now. I've heard quite a lot of different fitness professionals talk about Ozempic, who've actually done their own little trials and case studies on themselves. And, certainly people are now, I'm hearing a lot more people lean towards it actually being a lot safer than we initially thought. But I think, for anyone, relying on something in the long term is not, a very sustainable solution. So I like that he wants to stop taking Ozempic. Next, he's aware of severe kyphosis. So kyphosis is where we're referring to body posture, right? So if you think about me being side on here, typically if someone has a kyphotic spine, they have that round. So you guys still hear me? Okay, fantastic. Okay, so he's aware of kyphosis and he wants to improve it. Now, we don't know why he wants to improve it. Maybe it's an aesthetic thing. Maybe he's conscious about the way that his body looks. And he wants to be able to bring himself into more of an upright posture. Maybe the kyphosis and the rounded upper back is leading to other issues. Perhaps we often see people who have kyphotic spines experience a lot of neck issues because the head is placed in more of a forward position, puts a lot of strain on the neck muscles, also bringing a lot of our tissues into more of a forward rolled position, making it harder to do anything with like putting our arms overhead. But anyhow, he's aware of it, and I think he wants to change it. He wants to improve it. So if I read that correctly, if we want to improve the kyphosis, we're looking to try and reverse that position. If he's currently here, can we get him more towards a neutral spine? And lastly, reduce knee pain experience when squatting. Okay, so this guy, he's getting knee pain when he squats, and he wants to try and reduce that.
Now, we've got two pieces of important information here. We've got a lifestyle assessment. Now, when we talk about lifestyle assessment, we're really talking about things like sleep, nutrition, and behaviors. Those are three main things we're looking at. And then the next thing we have is a movement assessment. Okay, so we've conducted some form of movement assessment. We've got 4 key findings. Okay, let's quickly talk about our lifestyle assessment. Okay, so we know he's currently taking Ozempic. Now, he currently sleeps 5 to 6 hours per night, and he says he has poor quality with frequent awakenings. He's also undernourished in protein, so we don't know what that number is, but we're making an assumption that it's lower than what we probably deem he should be taking in. He's currently not tracking meals, and with that, unsurprisingly, limited knowledge of food education, macronutrient portion sizes. So, this is a pretty good representation of probably a lot of clients that we do deal with, who are coming into the gym for the very first time, no experience with what to do and how to do it when it comes to nutrition. Sleep quality is poor. And of course, we've got the Ozempic thing on top of that. Now, for today's call, I don't want to dig too much into the lifestyle stuff because I think that's going to be a whole nother hour. And I want to really concentrate on the resistance training and the energy system training side of things. However, just a quick piece on this is that if we know that someone's primary goals are, this person's biggest goal is going to be about weight loss and reducing pain, specifically in his knees, and there are some postural issues as well that he wants to improve. Now, when it comes to making changes as a coach, if we're looking at this lifestyle session, I think we can all probably look at this straight away and think, okay, yeah, he probably needs to increase his sleep. We need to get him off Ozempic. We need to do some food education. We need to increase his protein, right? Those are simple, obvious things. But the key to coaching is being able to link the changes that we think need to be made back to his goals. If this process of linking is such an important part of coaching. So for me, I'm going to talk about 5 to 6 hours of sleep a night, and why I might say to John, hey John, I think we need to probably try to make some improvements in your sleep. If you're currently sleeping 5 to 6 hours, what do you think is a realistic small jump that we can make that might help you? Because only sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night is going to be things like mental acuity and focus are going to be reduced. Blood sugar management is going to be all over the place. Things like ghrelin, our hormone, which is responsible for appetite control, that gets thrown into the universe when our sleep is poor. Having energy to be able to exercise and move is going to be lower if we're only sleeping 5 to 6 hours a night. So if we look at those 4 reasons alone, John, I think if we could get even 30 more minutes of sleep a night, that's going to give us a lot more energy and a lot more health benefits related to your goals. Now, if we package it and frame it that way, then John can really buy into that. He's like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I've got these clear goals, and by me sleeping 30 minutes a night more, that's going to have a big impact on me meeting my 40 kg weight loss goal. And we also know that sleep is highly linked to inflammation, right? So when we don't sleep enough, our body is generally more inflamed. And the more inflamed our body is, the more pain we're going to experience. So if we can show John and say, hey, John, just 30 more minutes of deep sleep is going to help your body repair so much better that your levels of inflammation are going to reduce and your pain is also going to reduce as well. John's going to be like, awesome. Well, that's one of my main goals. If sleeping 30 more minutes can reduce my inflammation, I'm in. Okay, so I think this is a really important skill as coaches that we need to really work on when it comes to making changes. Because I think coaches, generally speaking, it's not rocket science when we look at this to know what John needs to do. But to get buy-in and adherence from John, it needs to make sense to John. And it needs to be linked back to his goals. So with regards to protein, how can we have that conversation with John to tell him that protein and increasing protein intake might be good for him? Okay, well, I'm going to firstly say, let's talk about losing 40 kilograms. The way that we're going to do that in a healthy, sustainable way, as well as trying to improve and reduce your knee pain, is we need to do weight training. And if we do resistance training for you, John, we're going to build some strong structures in your lower body. The more muscle mass you have in your body, the more calories you're burning on a daily basis. But in order to build muscle mass, we need to be consuming protein. Right? Protein is our building blocks of muscle. So if we're not eating enough protein and we start doing all this great exercise that you want to do, we're simply not going to be building that muscle, and you're not going to be burning that fat, which means that the rate of weight loss over time is going to be much slower. So, John, do you think it would be a good idea for us to try and increase protein? What do you think John's going to say? Yes, absolutely. That makes total sense. Okay, so yes, again, another example of how we link it all back together. Great. So those are kind of just some initial thoughts on lifestyle that I think is really important for coaches to know. Of course, the last piece here, when it comes to making changes, as a general rule, when it comes to making changes for a client, when it comes to weights, intensity, volume, or even changes to things like lifestyle, I really want to keep those changes minimal. I set a golden rule of no more than a 10% change at any one point in time. So if there's more than a 10% change, so for example, 5 to 6 hours a night, if we're then increasing his hours of sleep by 50%, that's going to be pretty hard for John to stick to because it's such a radical change from what he's been used to doing. So general rule when it comes to changes, 10%, cap it at that. Okay, let's talk about movement assessment. So this coach has done a movement assessment. We've got some key findings here. So 4 things. His knee pain that he said he wants to try to fix. He feels knee pain when he does bending movements like squatting, lunging, step-ups, and stairs. Okay, so what that tells me straight away is the pain that he's experiencing is in very specific movements. So it's not necessarily kind of bending down and touching his toes. It's not when he does anything with his upper body. It's really when he's doing knee bending, what we call knee flexion type movements. Great. Okay, he's got valgus knees in standings. That basically means his knees are kind of collapsing inwards. I think we all know that when we look at a healthy human being, mostly we're going to see, pretty good alignment from hips to knees to ankles. So if we start to see knees caving in, well, we can probably put 2 and 2 together to say, valgus knees is going to mean like less than optimal alignment of his, his bones in his thigh, his femurs and his tibia, which means we're probably putting pressure in certain areas in the knee which might be contributing to his knee pain. Okay, so we've got to try and fix that potentially. Next, he's got overall limited range of mobility in his thoracic and overhead. That makes sense, right? This guy has a kyphotic posture, right? He's kind of rounded here. So everything's in flexion. So it makes sense that he's limited trying to get his arms over his head, trying to be an extension. That makes sense. But unfortunately, John also can't touch his toes. So we have a toe touch test that we teach in our course, which is basically keep your legs straight, simply just round forward and can you touch your toes? John can't do that. So he's, either that for me is, tension and tightness in his posterior chain. Maybe it's his calves, his hamstrings, his glutes, his lower back, his upper back. Or it could be weakness in his anterior chain. So things like his hip flexors, his psoas, his quads, which are responsible for lifting the legs up, could be weak there as well. We don't know. We don't have enough information from the assessment to know if it's a mobility limiter or it's a strength limiter. Does that make sense, guys? Fantastic. Okay, last one. Unsurprising, he's unable to perform a body weight split squat test. So that's just one of the tests that we teach our coaches to use. Simple body weight split squat test, with tempo. He's unable to do it. So he can't lower himself down and he can't get himself back up. Okay, is everyone happy with the information that we have on John? It's not massively comprehensive. We don't have, I think most of us, if we do assessments for clients, we get, even more information with this. But I definitely think we've got enough information to go away and start writing a training program. Would anyone like to quickly go see those again, or are we all good? Fantastic. Okay. So, guys, what I like to do we're going to actually go and start writing this training program now. And what I like to do, I'm not going to use any fancy apps or anything. I'm just going to use a Google Sheet, assuming that none of us have any fancy apps. So this is going to show you guys how you can start writing programs on a piece of paper tomorrow. Sound good? So I'm just going to quickly stop my screen share. I'm going to move over to another document. Sex team. Okay, going to share screen again. Right. Where did that go? Okay, everyone. No, I've shared the wrong screen. Sorry. Where did it go? Okay, guys, can everyone see my screen? Love it. Okay, just to speed up this process a little bit, I took a little head start just before this call, and I filled in a few things. I'm going to talk you guys through this. I'm going to make this screen just a wee bit bigger so you guys can see a bit more. Okay, now I'm just using Google Sheets here. You guys can do this in a piece of paper. You can do it on notes or whatever programming software you guys typically use. But the very first step that we have to do before we start sitting down and thinking about what exercises we're going to prescribe, what reps we're going to do, how many sets we're going to do, before we do any of that, the first thing we have to do is what we call the GPS. Now, most of us know GPS as that little thing that sits on a telephone or in our car that basically tells us where to go, right? We lock in our map destination, and then it's going to show us a route on the fastest way to get there. It's the same kind of idea, but GPS, when it comes to programming for us, there's three things. It's general. So what is the general focus of this training cycle? Because we're about to write a training cycle here. The next one, P. P stands for priorities. So what are the most important things to focus on in this cycle? And last one, structure. Let's write a basic structure for what each session is going to look like. Sound good? Just repeat that again. GPS. And all we're going to do, we're going to look at those 4 slides, those 4 pieces of information that we had about John, and we're going to basically fill in a GPS. So I've basically done that very quickly for general and priorities. And by the way, guys, I haven't written this program yet. I'm going to do it live with you. So let's talk about general. What are the general focuses for John? Well, I just kind of extracted the main piece of information from those 4 slides. His biggest goal is he wants to lose 40 kilograms by December 31st, 2025. Secondly, he wants to stop taking Ozempic. Oh, sorry, there's a third goal that I forgot to missed out. Reduce knee pain. Those are John's 3 main goals. Now, just some other notes I'm going to slide in there. I know this is going to be a 4-week training program. I've got 2 sessions a week. I'm going to assume that each session is going to be 60 minutes. So I only got 1 hour per session. Now, I'm going to choose to do full body resistance. So I like to refer to this as FBR, but because I've only got 2 training sessions in a week, and I'm going to do resistance training with John, we talked about that. You know, if we want someone to lose weight, we've got some pain issues here. We're trying to reduce inflammation. Resistance training is probably the most important thing that I want to make sure I include in John's program. It's going to fix, you know, a lot of his problems in the long run. So if I've only got 2 training sessions in the week, there's lots of different training splits I could do. I could do 1 upper body day and I could do 1 lower body day. I could do 2 full body days where we're doing legs and upper body. I could do like a bodybuilding split. Maybe on session 1, I'm doing chest, biceps, and hamstrings. And in session 2, I'm doing shoulders, lats, and quads. There's loads of different ways to do it, but the reason I'm going to go with FBR, full body resistance, is because I'm only seeing John twice a week. So if I did an upper body session and a lower body session, and let's say I was Monday and Friday, it's going to be a whole 7 days again before John gets to train his upper body and his lower body. Now, because John is a beginner, what we need to understand is that when we have beginners who are new to strength training, a lot of the early days of their training process is really about skill acquisition, right? They're just trying to learn how to press dumbbells, right? They're trying to get their body to coordinate with their brain. How do I stabilize these 2 dumbbells? How do I lower it and press it up again in a straight line? So we call this motor control. So most beginners, when they start weight training, they spend most of the time making motor control adaptations, where they're just trying to get their brain and their body to work together. Do you guys can you guys recognize that maybe in your own journeys or with the people that you've coached before? So whilst you may see that beginners make these kind of really fast gains in their numbers, you know, they go from 5 kg dumbbells to 7.5 to 10 to 12.5, and we think, wow, they're just getting strong so fast. They're not actually getting strong. What they're doing, they are just learning how to coordinate their body so that they can eventually express strength. So for me, because I'm not going to be able to really smash his body with hard weight training because most of the exercises he's going to have to be learning in the first phase, I'm going to go 2 full body resistance training sessions. That means twice a week, each of his major muscle groups in his body is going to get some form of resistance training. Sound good? Now, if John was training 3 times a week or 4 times a week, then I've got way more options now. Maybe I might start doing upper and lower body days, bodybuilding split days, or I might even do 3 full body resistance days. But generally for me, if someone is training 2 days or less in a week, then full body resistance is always going to be the way forward. It's always going to be the best bet. Okay, the next question is aerobic energy system training. Now, the question is, okay, well, what place does energy, like metabolic conditioning, have in John's program? Well, for me, I think it's really important because, I mean, number one, all 99.9% of life is aerobic activity, right? We need the aerobic energy system to fuel us to be able to move, to walk, to sit, to talk. So if we can develop some aerobic capacity for John, that's going to be fantastic. Being aerobically fit is going to help him make some great adaptations with his heart, with his lungs. Now, I know those aren't really primary goals for him, but it's going to be great for him in terms of improving his health markers. Increasing his aerobic capacity is also going to help his ability to recover. Because remember, our ability to recover between reps, between sets, between training days is really dictated by how aerobically fit we are, right? So the people with higher levels of aerobic fitness can recover faster between strength training sessions. And I think the last thing for me here is that there is so much data and studies now on links between VO2 max and longevity, right? So for me, I look at John and I'm looking at, this brief assessment we have on him, and I'm seeing that this is a classic case of someone who might die, unfortunately, at an earlier age than the average. And he's severely overweight. He's probably got a long history of doing it. He's in his 40s now already. He doesn't sleep very much. And if we don't radically change John's health, then John could be, unfortunately, ending life much earlier than he probably should be. And so because there's so many links now between things like VO2 max and, reduction in all-cause mortality. What I mean by that is any reason for why someone dies. We're seeing so many studies they've done over 50-year periods that the more aerobically fit someone is, the longer their lifespan and the longer their health span. So for me, aerobic conditioning is going to be really important for John somewhere. And lastly, I've got to do mobility work with him, right? We know his goals are about addressing his kyphosis. He can't squat, he can't touch his toes. So I need to have mobility work in this training program somewhere. That makes sense with the general guys. So these are basically just, I've abbreviated and taken the main, most important notes that I want to refer to when I write this program. I've listed them down here. Next, let's go to priorities. What are the most important things to focus on the cycle? Well, we're not going to cover this today, but from a lifestyle perspective, I'm definitely going to try to increase his sleep, which is currently 5 to 6 hours. I definitely want to increase protein intake, and I want to give him some education on nutrition. Okay, we're not going to deal with that today, so let's really just talk about, from the movement perspective, what are the priorities that we want to work on? Well, I need to find a way to reduce his knee pain through training. I've got to improve his valgus knees. I've got to try and improve his kyphosis. I've got to try and improve his toe touch mobility. I've got to try and improve his thoracic and his overhead mobility. And I want to be able to get him to do a body weight split squat. That's a test that he failed. And if I can at the end of the cycle show John, hey John, 4 weeks ago you couldn't do a body weight split squat, but now you can, that's going to be really motivating for John because he's going to see success straight away. So this is where, using your assessment as almost like a test and a retest is a really powerful tool that you can use as a coach. Now there's another priority, aerobic conditioning. I don't know what that's going to look like right now, but I want to do something for him. Okay, so that's my general and that's my priorities. I've just listed the main things down because in a second, I'm going to start writing this training program. I want to have the GPS somewhere handy so I can continue to refer back to this, right? If I didn't have this, just imagine this didn't exist and I just sit down and I start writing a training program. And let's say I write in 2 weeks and then I go and, do live for a week. I'm training all the other clients and doing all the other things. And I come back after 2 weeks to write John's third week of programming. what's the likelihood that I can remember all of these things? Pretty damn low, right? Especially if you're training multiple clients. If you don't have something like a GPS, which is your cheat sheet, it's your navigation system, and it's there and it's well thought out and it's somewhere that's accessible to see, it makes programming, especially as you go beyond 4 weeks, really, really easy because you've got a reference point. That's why for me it's a non-negotiable. You can't skip this bit out. Okay, last piece, structure. Now we're going to write a basic structure for what each session is going to look like. So for me, I know I'm going to do full body resistance training. We've already said that, right? Now what I'm going to do is session 1, I'm going to make some just brief headlines as to what I want to do in that session. And then once I've done this, I can then go down here and actually start writing his sessions out. Okay, so I'm just going to get into this, guys. I'll share my thoughts as I go. Okay, so we definitely have to start with some mobility work to start. And specifically, I want to be working on improving his toe touch. I want to improve his thoracic. And I want to improve squat position. Now, the reason I'm not putting overhead, because he said he wants to improve his overhead, he's got poor overhead mobility, is that right now, if I can make improvements in his thoracic spine, that's already going to make a big improvement in his overhead, right? If I can get his spine, let's say his shoulder mobility is here, if I can get his spine to this position, that's already going to increase overhead range of motion by 20 to 30 degrees. Okay, so for me, I'm not going to waste time doing shoulder mobility work because I've only got 2 hours of them a week. I'm going to focus on the thoracic, and that's going to give me a lot more bang for my buck. Okay, now I'm just going to keep that simple, and I think each session I'm going to start with that. I'm just going to work on toe touch, thoracic, squat position, and keep it simple. Okay, from a strength and conditioning standpoint, what exercise are off limits to me? Okay, when it comes to structuring a session, I generally want to start with the biggest movements first. The movements that are going to use the most amount of muscles, recruit the most amount of muscles, and are the most neurologically demanding. So I'm not going to start my session with bicep curls and tricep extensions and lateral delt raises. Instead, I want to be thinking about the big compound lifts like split squats, Romanian deadlifts, hip thrusts, dumbbell bench pressing, bent over rows, cable rows. Those are my multi-joint exercises. So I definitely want to create a bias in his pulling work. So I'm going to go horizontal pulling. The reason I'm going to create a bias in his pulling work because I don't want to do more pressing work for John. Because if I give him more pressing work, what's that going to do for John's kyphosis? The more work I do pressing forward, I'm just going to exacerbate his issue with kyphosis. So this program, I'm actually not going to give him any pressing work. He hasn't stated that it's a goal for him, so I don't see the need for it. So I'm going to go horizontal pulling in session 1. I'm probably going to do horizontal pulling in session 2, if I'm honest. I want to do that more. Like the more work I can do where he's pulling towards him, that's going to really make improvements in his kyphosis. I'm going to do some form of hinging. Hinging is going to be great for John because he can do it pain-free. He can't go very far, but he can do it. So hinging, I'm going to say hamstrings, glutes. I definitely want to get that in. I'm probably going to get that in both sessions. Now, when it comes to John's squatting patterns, I don't have many options right now because John, he's in pain when he does a bodyweight squat. He can't do a bodyweight split squat. So there's no point in me programming goblet squats or split squats because John can't do that right now. But I do want to train his quads. I do want to train him in a squatting pattern, but I just need to find another way to do that. So what I'm going to do a leg press. The reason I like a leg press is John is anchored in the machine. He doesn't have to worry about stability. And we can make that leg press 2 kilograms if we want to, and we can make it 300 kilograms if we want to. The problem is with something like an air squat, the air squat, your starting load, your lightest load is your body weight. If you can't do that already, then the air squat's not a good exercise. Okay, so I'm going to go with a leg press. I'm probably going to go here. I definitely want to train his quads. I'm going to go with a leg extension. I could get him to leg press twice a week, but just for variation, I'm going to get him to do a leg extension. That's going to allow me to train his quads, and it's going to be in a fairly unloaded position. Got horizontal pulling, I've got hinging, hamstrings, glutes. I don't really have step-ups as an option because that causes him pain. I don't really have lunges. as an option because that causes him pain as well. So I know that as I reduce John's weight, if we can get John to lose 20 kilograms, he's going to be squatting and split squatting 20 kg less. And if we can make those changes to his nutrition and inflammation and sleep, he's going to be at some point in time in a not too distant future, he's probably going to be able to start squatting and split squatting, but not yet. Okay, I'm not going to rush into it. Okay, I definitely want some form of core work. I think core work is going to be really important for John. And I want some aerobic conditioning. Okay, right. Now, I've decided to just make a call on this 10-minute assault bike test. I'm going to give John a target over his 4 weeks. At the end of the 4 weeks, I want John to test his 10-minute assault bike. Reason being, it's a really simple test. You know, if I get John to do that in week 1, that could look like a walk. You know, he could just be doing a 10-minute walking test, but it's going to give me some metrics. It's going to give me a score. And if I can do some training over 4 weeks, and at the end of the 4 weeks, I can have him do another test. And if he improves the score, how's John going to feel? He's going to feel great. You know, he's going to be like, wow, coach, you've just, you know, really improved my aerobic capacity. Thank you so much. But if we're not finding ways to prove and show our clients that they're making progress, then training can be, you know, a monotonous, sometimes boring, sometimes is this even working type of process. So the more ways we can prove progress with the client, the better. Okay, so aerobic conditioning. I'm going to say that his 10-minute assault bike in progressions. So on his second session, I'm going to do 10-minute assault bike progressions. Okay, so I'm going to test him at the end. And his first session, aerobic conditioning, I'm going to do a machine. Let's go Biko. Now, with his aerobic conditioning, I'm going to keep it super simple for John. John is not for me. He's not a candidate who qualifies for mixed modal conditioning. So things like CrossFit Metcons, where we're doing, you know, weightlifting, gymnastics, and monostructural exercise. You know, you need a really high level of motor control. You need high levels of muscle endurance. You need high levels of strength to be able to do that stuff safely. John can't even squat. He can hardly walk upstairs. So putting John and making him do an AMRAP of 3 different movements is probably not going to be a very smart decision. Do you guys agree? As John loses weight and he gets stronger and he learns how to move, for sure, maybe in 6 months' time, we're going to start to have loads more options that we can use with his aerobic work. But for now, we've got to keep it simple. Okay. So I'm really happy with that. I like my structure for session 1. I like my structure for session 2. Now what I'm going to do, now I can start going in and writing my training sessions. Okay, so I'm actually going to start by working backwards. I'm going to start with week 4 with some things, and I'm going to work my way back to week 1. Reason being is in week 4, I'm going to do a 10-minute assault bike test. So I want to finish his program with a test. So if I put that in there now, I know that I'm not going to forget it. So I'm going to go 10-minute assault bike progression 1, 10-minute assault 2, and he's going to test. You guys see that? Put that in there already. Fantastic. I'm probably going to put that at the end of his training session. Okay. Now, I also want to get him doing some work here. So I'm going to start with an aerobic warm-up. So rather than his aerobic work just being at the end of his session all the time, I actually might start session 1 with a really easy aerobic warm-up on the bike. Again, I'm just making this shit up as I go along. I'm just going to keep on justifying as I go along, but you're going to see that there's 100 ways for us to do this. You know what? No, I'm going to change it. I'm going to keep it at the end because I don't want to fatigue John at the start of his session before doing resistance training because he's brand new to it. So again, this is actually what my programming looks like. I'm going back and forth, deleting, changing my mind as I go through things. Okay, now, my mobility warm-up. I don't care about that yet. That's simple. I'm going to deal with that later. But I know I've got some horizontal pulling. I've got some hinging hamstrings, glutes, leg pressing core. Okay, so I've got these movements to play with, and I want to make sure that I'm prioritizing the hardest ones first and finishing with the easiest ones. So when I look at, well, what's hardest here, I'm going to go with A, Romanian deadlift. I'm going to go with dual dumbbells because dumbbells are super simple. You don't have to worry about this fixed bar, which confuses a lot of people. Dumbbells are a really great way to teach someone how to do Romanian deadlift. I'm not doing reps yet. I'm just going to get the exercise down. So he's going to do Romanian deadlifts to start. Now, I'm not going to pair his exercises yet because when you do things like A1 and A2, whilst it's fantastic, if you're brand new to training, you're having to remember two things at once. He needs to learn, he's going to learn how to do an RDL and he's never done one before. If I'm like, all right, John, I'm going to teach you a Romanian deadlift and I'm going to teach you how to do a cable row, John's like, overload. Too much. One thing at a time, please. So we're going to start Romanian deadlifts. Next is what's the most complex movement here that's going to involve the most amount of muscle group? Probably a leg press for me. And then my C work is going to be, I want to do some form of horizontal pulling. I'm going to do something simple. By this point in time, John's going to be pretty exhausted, right? His brain's on overload. His legs are pretty cooked. I can't ask too much of him. So I'm going to get John to do a seated single arm neutral grip cable row. And that's going to be my horizontal pulling exercise. Okay, how much time have I got? Not that much. I got to do some core work. Now, the core work for John, I mean, I know that everything for John right now is very kyphosis based, right? So if I do things like sit-ups, great exercise, am I going to be potentially contributing to his kyphosis or unwinding his kyphosis? I'm going to be contributing to it, right? So I want to think about what other simple exercise can I do for John that's going to be focused on his core, but also maybe I can kill two birds with one stone. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a farmer's carry. Super simple. Dual kettlebell farmer's carry. Okay, then his E work to finish is going to be super simple, 10-minute bike erg at easy pace. So I want this to be kind of like zone 2, zone 3 work. Nothing hard. It's super simple, really brainless. I want him to sweat and I want to get him some basic aerobic adaptations. Okay, guys. I'm pretty happy with that session. Are you guys happy with that session? I'm ticking all the bases. I've ticked all the boxes on what I wanted to do. The only thing I haven't done yet is I haven't written my mobility work that I want to do at the start of the session. So I'm going to keep it super simple. I'm going to say a 5-minute foam roll. I definitely want to target his hamstrings. I want to target his whole posterior chain, right? So calves, hamstrings, glutes, probably thoracic. I want to try and loosen up that whole posterior chain because remember, the toe touch is one of our priorities. I also want to improve his thoracic. I'm getting that there. So I'm probably going to get him to do some form of I want to specifically get him into extension. So I think cat-cows are going to be great because I'm getting him into flexion and I'm getting into an extension. But I also want to make sure I'm getting some rotation. So I want to try and open up his T-spine, and we know that to increase extension, we need to increase rotation. That's one of the golden rules when it comes to improving thoracic extension. So I'm going to do super simple quadruped thoracic rotations. So he's going to be on all fours, so he's supported, hand on his head, and he's just going to do some slow rotations for his thoracic. Okay, now the only thing I haven't done here is I haven't done anything for his squat position. But I also know that I'm going to get some squat work in his leg press. Okay, now one of our priorities, guys, we need to fix his valgus knees, right? We know that John's knees fall in. Now, valgus knees can be typically down to a number of reasons, but it could be tension or tightness in his adductors, right? Inside of his thighs, everything pulling his knees inwards. But it could also be weakness in things like his glute med and his VMOs. VMOs are big quad muscle, that teardrop muscle. The VMO is responsible for controlling the patella, which helps with alignment. And we know that the glute med, the glutes on the outside, is responsible for externally rotating the legs. Okay, so typically we see people with caving in knees have weak VMOs, weak quads, and they have weak glute meds. So how can I get after this and improve this. So for me, I'm going to call this mobility / activation. I'm going to keep it simple, side lying banded clamshells, right? Super easy exercise. He doesn't really have to think about it. That's going to wake up his glutes. Yeah, and I'm going to keep it at that for now. I'm not going to make it any more complex than that. I'm just going to put this left justified. Okay, I've got my session there. I'm really happy with that. Now, before I move on and do reps and sets, I'm going to get session number 2 done in the week. So I'm going to keep his mobility and activation exactly the same. Because if John's my client and we're doing personal training, in session 1, I'm going to teach John how to do this. And in session 2, I'm going to say, John, if you can come in 5 minutes early, I want you to start doing your mobility and activation work by yourself. Right? That's going to give us a little bit more time to actually get into our strength training. Cool? So I'm not going to confuse him. I don't want to overload him with information. John's second session is going to start with exactly the same things. Now, let's look at our training session. We've got horizontal pulling. We have horizontal pulling. We've got hinging hamstrings, glutes again. We've got some leg extensions. We've got core. Okay, great. So I want to make sure I'm changing up, not doing the same thing. So I need to think of another exercise that's going to be, an exercise that's going to recruit a lot of muscles to start his session. And I want to do another remaining deadlift. So what I'm going to do for John, I'm going to keep it simple. We're going to go with a glute barbell, glute hip thrust, or a glute bridge. Okay, now that might be on the floor. It might be just back on a bench. I'm going to do something that's super simple. Maybe there's a machine in the gym that's like a glute bridge machine. Even better, because it does all the stabilizing for him. So I'm going to start with that. So we get his posterior chain in. Now, we said we've got to get some leg extensions, horizontal pulling. Okay, leg extension, great exercise, but it's pretty small muscle groups. So I'm going to prioritize a horizontal pull. You know what? I'm going to change this just to make sure we're getting all planes of movement in. I'm going to change it to a vertical pull rather than a horizontal pull. So I'm going to get him to do a seated single arm neutral grip pull down. Now, the reason I'm going single arm for John's pulling work is that's actually going to help create a bit of rotation through his thoracic. Even I'm not going to let him rotate too much, but creating some rotation through his rib cage is actually going to help John improve his thoracic mobility. So I'm killing 2 birds with 1 stone here, right? I could just go for a dual arm pull down or a dual arm bent over row, but by doing single arm, I'm actually freeing up his rib cage a bit, which is going to help this thoracic. Okay, so I'm going to keep that as B work. C work is going to be a seated leg extension, getting some quad work in there. Now, we want to get some core work in there. Now, John was already doing farmer's carries. He was doing kind of like a sagittal plane, pretty simple carry. What do I want to get John to do? Can't really get him to hold anything because he's probably got a bit too much mass and that's going to be uncomfortable. I don't really want to get him into a front plank position just yet because I want to try and do more pulling based work. So what I'm going to get John to do, I'm going to get him to do a Sorensen hold. Sorensen hold can be done in a GHD, but I think a GHD is going to be too hard for John. So I'm going to get him to do a 45-degree incline Sorensen hold. So does everyone know what I mean by that? So it's like those 45-degree machines where you do hip extensions on, right? And then I'm going to get him to just hold that position for me. So he's going to be working his glutes, his hamstrings, and his core, and his posterior chain, which is going to be great for his kyphosis. Okay, then I've got his E work is going to be a 10-minute assault bike progression. Right, I'm pretty happy with that, with our exercises. So the reason I'm not doing reps and sets yet is because sometimes I get to this stage, I need to start changing things. And I start kind of moving things around. Now, if I've written all the reps and sets already, it's just a lot of things to change. So now that I'm happy with this, we can go ahead. Cool? Now, let's go into things like reps and sets. So Romanian deadlift. I'm going to keep his tempo super simple. 3 seconds down, 1 second up. Maybe I'm going to give him a little pause at the top as well. I'm going to get him to just go 3 sets of 12 reps, rest 90 seconds. Leg press. I'm going to get him to go 3 seconds down. I'm going to give him a little pause at the bottom position so we can kind of just really work on getting a bit more of a stretch and length position. 3 seconds down, 1 second up, 1 second pause. Again, I'm going to keep it super simple. rest 90 seconds. And all of these guys in week 1, I'm going to have him build his load through his set. So you're going to start light. I'm going to teach him the movement based on good form, which is going to increase each set. Seated single arm neutral grip row, 3 down, 1 up, super simple, 3 times 12 per arm. I'm going to go rest 45 to 60 seconds between sides and sets. I don't really need my rest to be longer than that, guys, because remember, John's just learning the movement. He's not going to be taxing himself that much. Farmer's carry, I want to keep it simple, 2 to 3 sets times, I'm going to give him to you 45 to 60 second hold, carry. I'm going to get him to rest 60 to 120 seconds. Giving some bigger rep ranges here because I'm not really sure how John's going to go with this. Week 1, honestly, it might just be 2 sets. And we might start super light, like 8 kg kettlebells that John's like, that was so easy, I don't need to rest much. So that's why I got a bigger rest there. And then I've got 10-minute bike zone pace. I mean, if I can get him to do nasal breathing, which is going to really force him to slow down a bit, light damper, then that's even better. Cool. I'm really happy with that for my first session. Okay, now let me get to session 2. Let's fill in the details now. A hip thrust is a short range of motion, so 2 seconds down, 1 second up. But I'm going to get him to really focus on squeezing his glutes for 2 seconds at the top. Session 1, he's training his glutes in a lengthened position. Session 2, I'm going to get him to train his glutes in a shortened position. So we're going to go 3 sets of 12 reps, rest 90 seconds. We got seated single arm pull down. I'm not going to make this complex. I'm going to copy exactly what I did on session 1, and I'm going to get him to do the same reps there. Cool, 3 by 12. Seated leg extensions, simple exercise. What I'm going to do, I'm going to bump up the reps a little bit here. 3 sets. I'm going to go 15 reps. That's 90 seconds. Because, you know, when we use machines, most of the stabilizing is done for us, right? We just have to think about extension coming down. So we can jack up the reps a little bit. And then we got a 45-degree Sorensen hold. Now, let's just get a little bit creative here, guys. We're going to go C1, C2, because these are 2 pretty simple exercises. I'm going to go 3 sets. I'm not going to go crazy because it's the first time doing it. 45 to 60 seconds. So do you guys see what I've done there? I've actually made this a pairing exercise. Reason being, we're training 2 very different muscle groups. There's very little interference. And because they're 2 really simple exercises, I'm confident that I can teach John those 2 exercises, and he's not going to forget how to do them. One, he just has to hold, and the other one, he just has to sit and straighten his legs. Okay. And the next thing is I've got to create an assault bike progression for John. So because he's never done a 10-minute test before, and I want to collect some data on John, I'm going to get him to do a 10-minute assault bike test for max calories. So this is kind of like my litmus test. Let's see how fit John is, and let's record how many calories he completed. All right. How do we feel, guys? All good? Okay, now what we have to do, we've done 1 week. Now it's time to basically do the rest of this program. And we can get fancy and creative and change this up every week. But remember, John is a beginner. John's never done weight training before. So if every week we're changing John's program, John's going to be wasting a lot of time and energy just learning new movements and not actually getting strong. So as a general rule of thumb, the higher someone's training age, the more they've been training for, the more variety you can have in their training program. The lower someone's training age, and the more new they are to training, the less variety you have to have in their training program. So, guys, I'm going to be boring Coach Ed, and I'm just going to copy and paste the same thing over. And I know that in week 2, John's going to be able to increase his loads, right? Because he feels a little bit more comfortable. Now, when I go to session 2, I'm not going to make John do another 10-minute assault bike test. That'll be terrible for John. So instead, we're going to do some assault bike progressions. Remember, I've only got 2 weeks to try and create some form of progression here. So let's say John did his test and he achieved 50 calories. These stats might be completely off, and he held an average RPM of 40. Okay, that was John's score. Okay, so now my goal is when I do my 10-minute assault bike test in week 4, I want to make sure that John achieves more than 50 calories. That's my goal. So in week 2, let's go for his training, assault bike. I'm going to go 3 sets of 2.5 minutes of work. I'm going to get him to rest 1 minute. And I'm going to get him to holding 42 to 45. Holding 42 to 45 RPM. Okay, so here's what we did, guys. I've got him on week 2 to accumulate 7.5 minutes of work. But I've made him do that at a slightly faster pace. So John, at the end of this session, I've given him 1 minute rest, so he gets a bit of rest in as well. So with this format now, John is going to he's going to start to get comfortable working at 42 to 45 RPMs, right? Because my goal is that when he does his test again, I want John to try and do a 10-minute test at anywhere between 42 to 45 RPMs, right? So this interval-based piece where I've broken it down, 2.5 minutes is about 25% of the 10-minute test. That's a really good general rule of thumb. If you start about 25% and build up, it's good. So I'm just gonna, because I'm on a roll with this now, I'm gonna move this over to week 3. Now, the one thing I'm gonna change straight away is I'm gonna bump John up this time. I've got some options. I can either increase his RPMs or I can increase his volume. And I'm gonna increase his volume because in week 3, John will have now done 10 minutes of work. We were just broken up into intervals. And he would have done that at 42 to 45 RPM. Or in fact, you know what I'm going to do, guys? Let's not just be boring, although that would have worked perfectly well. I want to give you guys more options. I'm going to get John instead, week 2, week 3, he's going to do 2 sets of 5 minutes at that faster pace. Okay, now I know that when I come to week 4, I'm confident that John's going to be able to do 10-minute test at a faster pace because in week 3, he accumulated 10 minutes at a much faster pace. So I'm confident that this, I know it's not a very long cycle, right? All we had was 2 weeks. But I'm confident that's going to set him up for a good testing week in week 4. Okay, now let's quickly look at this. Do I need to change anything with John's training? You know what? I might just give him some rep ranges now because maybe John is actually starting to pick up these movements pretty well. And maybe his Sorensen hold, I can maybe increase it from 30 seconds to 40 seconds. Those are going to be my progressions for John. Cool. Happy with that, guys? Nice. Let's go to his week 2. Okay, do I need to change anything? Honestly, guys, I'm not going to change it. I'm going to keep it super simple. John's still each week making nice little progressions. His farmer's carry, I might bump him up now to 3 sets of 45 seconds. So in week 2, if he did 2 sets of 60 seconds, he did 2 minutes of work. If I get him doing 3 sets of 45 seconds, he is now doing 2 minutes 15 of work. So he's starting to get more work in. Now, do I want to change this up? No, you know what? Even in that conditioning piece to finish, I'm just going to keep it super simple. There's no need to start getting fancy with it. Are there other exercises that I could do for John? Yeah, maybe I could get John on a rower. Yeah, you know what? Maybe, no, I'm going to keep it simple. Let's not get too carried away. Okay, great. Now we're going to go to our final piece. Okay, so we're going to go week 4. We've got a 10-minute assault bike test. Right. So again, you know, with more advanced athletes, we might think about doing things like deloads and stuff like that. But because John hasn't really been doing that much intensity with his training, he's just learning the movements. I'm going to keep everything here. And I'm going to just finish with 10-minute assault bike test. Oh, I've rewritten it. Okay, John's target pace is going to be anywhere between 42 to 45 RPM. And I know if he can do that, John is PRing. And he's going to say to me as his coach, Ed, wow, you're a miracle worker. You just got me so fit in 4 weeks. But we had a nice logical progression. And now John is like, I'm ready for round 2 with you, coach. Okay, now we go back to this. Do I need to make changes again? Honestly, probably not. Because this is a beginner. If we had more of an advanced client, yes, we would probably have to make changes and make some adjustments to his training as he went along. Okay, guys, there we have it. We have our program for John, and we've got 4 weeks that we bashed out there in less than an hour. So I just want to really quickly recap, you know, some really important phases of this whole process that I think a lot of coaches miss out. number one is taking the time to create your GPS, right? What most coaches do, they do an assessment, they get information on their client, and they go straight to this bit here. They start, putting in exercises, rep schemes. They type it out, they backspace it, type it out, backspace. They get really confused and lost what the hell they should be doing in the program because they don't have their guiding principles, right? So my biggest piece of advice to you guys is when you do your assessments, you write down all your information, but before you even think about writing the training programs, do your GPS. And the more thorough you can do your GPS, the more detailed it is, and the more clear and succinct it is, the easier this is going to be. Because especially, imagine John was doing an 8-week program. I've done all this. I want to come back and write another 4 weeks in a few weeks' time. Again, I'm going to forget what John's even doing because I've got 10 other clients who are working towards their own unique goals. That if I have my guiding principles up here, I'm going to be good. Okay. Now I realize, guys, that I'm now at 1 hour and I'm supposed to call this off in 5 minutes. So has anyone got just any just general questions? I'll cap this at 5 minutes on that whole process. Would anyone like to ask anything? I'm not offended if you don't, by the way. Totally fine.
Yeah, I've got a question.
Yes, we got, okay, Amy, and then we'll go Amy first, and we'll go Mariam next.
Okay, cool. So I'm kind of just
Oh, sorry, I can't hear you, Amy. Can everyone else hear Amy? Is that me? Everyone can hear her? Oh, awesome, that's me then. Yes, try again. No, don't try again. Okay, go.
Okay, can you hear me now?
No, why can't I hear you?
Do you want me to put it? I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, going back to my headphones. Sorry, Amy.
This is me. Okay, go.
Okay, can you hear me now? Cool. Okay. I was just going to ask, how do you see it kind of progressing each week? In terms of you keeping the rep ranges and the tempo the same. Do you see him sticking with that same load on the exercises just until he gets the movement quality down? And then in the future, you'd look to maybe either changing up tempo or a bit more to do with some things.
Good question. Can you guys hear me okay? I know I've got my crappy headphones in. Okay, so good question. With regards to tempo for beginners is probably going to be the variable that I change the least because I don't think it has that big of an impact on the training response. So for most beginners, I'm going to generally stick with some
Microphone. Everyone can hear me? Okay, so tempo is going to be the thing that I change the least. What I'm looking to do, exactly as you said, Amy, is I'm looking to progress his loads. Because with John, because he's a beginner and most of his adaptations he's making in the early stage of this program are just motor control, right? His brain is learning to work with his body. And so he's going to be able to increase loads very, very quickly. That's why we call them kind of those newbie gains. So yeah, I would just be looking to increase his loads. And I'm only going to drop his reps, Amy, if I feel that I can't increase his load more. So for example, dumbbell bench press, we didn't use it with John, but let's say a lot of people use a dumbbell bench press, and let's say we prescribe 12 reps, and they get to 12, they progress over 3 weeks, but then to jump up in weight to go from a 10 kg to a 12.5 kg, that's really hard for them to still do 12 reps. So what we're going to do is we increase the load, we take them to 15 kg, but we're going to drop the reps. So I'll only reduce the reps if I feel like I need to. Otherwise, I'm going to keep it the same and try to continue to progress load. Yeah, I used to, when I was, newer to coaching, would just like periodically reduce reps, but only reduce them if you need to. If you can still get someone to increase load at the same reps, that's already a progression. Awesome. That answers your question, Amy? Fantastic. Okay, I think I have to put my earphones in to hear the question.
Can you hear me? Oh,
Try again.
testing.
Yes.
Okay. I have two questions. So the first one is, would it be too much or just fine to give him an aerobic work assignment? I was thinking like increase steps per day, or let's say maybe asking him to go for a jog is too much. But yeah, I was thinking of that. And then second, I noticed that you know right away which movements to pair up for supersets. Is there like a reference in general that we can
Yeah.
go? Yeah.
Love it. Great question. Everyone hear me? Okay.
First one, yes, a movement assignment would be fantastic. So if we get John to move for 10 to 20 minutes a day on top of what he's already doing, would be fantastic. But for this case, I didn't really want to address the lifestyle stuff too much. But yeah, absolutely, the more movement, the better. So I would say yes. But just remember, if John can only do, John's going from 0 to 2 PT sessions a week, that's already a massive jump. Okay, so I wouldn't rush to get him to do more just yet. I'd probably get him to be consistent on 2 PT sessions. And then maybe after 4 weeks, we're like, okay, John, you've hit all your PT sessions over the last 4 weeks. How do you feel about maybe doing one extra piece in your week? Maybe it's like, going for a 20, 30-minute walk. And he'd probably be like, okay, I think I can do that. But I wouldn't overwhelm him too much too quick. Does that make sense, Mariam? And then the second one is movement pairings. Yes, when it comes to alternating exercises for beginners, we're going to think about picking movements that have no interference. What I mean by that, if I did a pairing of a cable row and a bicep curl, both of those movements are involving my biceps, right? So that's not going to be a very good exercise pairing if I'm trying to train both in isolation. However, a cable row with a dumbbell bench press are training opposite muscles, right? So this is what we call a complementary movement pairing, where there's very low interference. Now, the only time you're going to want to pair exercises of the same muscle groups is generally if you're working with probably more intermediate to advanced athletes, who maybe you're doing supersets or you're training muscle endurance, or it's a sport specific adaptation. But generally speaking, with beginners, I want my movement pairings to be opposites. We call it agonists and antagonists, right? Different muscle groups that aren't going to interfere with one another. Great question, Mariam. Okay, I'm going to go for one last question, team, if anyone has any. Love it. Okay, just so you know, guys, if you have more questions, maybe like after the fact, maybe you watch a recording and a few things pop up, you can always reach out to me on Instagram. I will 100% get back to you. So if you have more questions you prefer to ask on there, please do it. Okay, great. I just want to finish off with just one last piece, guys, just talking about a couple of things that we have coming up. I want to talk to you guys a little bit about our course. But if you have no interest in learning about the course, absolutely no worries. You can just sign off now. And that's no problem at all. I'm going to whiz through this. So if anyone is interested in wanting to learn more, maybe this has kind of spiked your interest. You'd love to, level up your game on how to write training programs, or just, develop your skills as a coach. We do have an individual coaching course. It's all fully online. It's about 24 hours of learning content through videos. You guys get like a transcript as well with all the words. If you're like a visual and an audio and there's two things. Yeah, learner. Oh, you like to read as well. That's right. You got kind of get all your bases covered. We have 3 different variations of the course. We have a cohort that's going to be starting in Feb. So Feb 13th is going to be our next cohort. We've got lots of people on this call who graduated from our previous one. So thanks for joining, guys. You guys also have the option to do the course one-on-one. And that's with me. I love doing the course one-on-one with students. And we also have a solo option. So if you're like, listen, I would much rather just do this by myself at my own pace and start whenever I wanted, we also do have a solo option that kind of just sits there that you can begin whenever you want. If anyone's interested, and this is important to people, I know it's important to some people, the course is NASM approved. So you get full credits, 1.9 credits, which is the highest amount of credits that you can get from a certification if you do the course. So some people, they think that's pretty cool. Just a quick one on pricing. Yeah, basically our cohort model, which is starting in Feb, that's kind of like our middle range. If people want to do mentorship one-on-one, that's definitely a little bit more expensive. And our most affordable option is going to be our solo option. And if you guys haven't done it, by the way, we have a free course. So our free course, we got some basically chapters from resistance training and assessments. I would 100% recommend that you try our free course first. You can go onto our Instagram, so Process Education, or on my page, click on the free course. Definitely do that before you think about doing anything else, because it will give you a real good taste of what the course is about. Just some key dates and timing, because I know I have a few people on this call who are interested in the cohort and learning more. So the cohort, we have 7 calls. We have limited spots on it. We have 7 calls spread over a 3-month period. Each call is kind of like this, it's with myself and the education team, and we're breaking down the different chapters. In the course, we have 6 stages. Our first stage is all about assessment and onboarding for our clients. Our second stage is all about lifestyle and nutrition. Our third stage is all about how to write resistance training programs. So a lot of the stuff we kind of talked about today. The 4th stage is all about learning about energy systems. So how to write metabolic conditioning programs and progress it over time. And our 5th stage is kind of like, how do you blend strength and endurance training together? And our final stage is all about developing the coaching professional. So we dig into things like values, branding, marketing yourself, how to develop yourself as a coach in the long term. Just our dates. So we basically have all our times already locked in. Now our students can't always make the calls. Sometimes life gets in the way, but all calls are recorded and it will be sent around to all attendees. We have a WhatsApp group where there's constant communication between the cohort, which I think is pretty cool. You can ask the coaches anything you need during this time about coaching, your own case studies with your clients, and obviously any help on the course as well. And then we have a unique offer for you guys. So if anyone on this call is thinking, you know what, maybe I would actually like to join this cohort or the solo options, then we do have a discount. We're giving you guys a 15% discount for those who attended tonight. But you only have 48 hours to claim it. So if you are interested, you got more questions, please reach out to me personally on social media. And I can just help you answer anything you have. Absolutely no pressure at all. This has to 100% align with you and where you want to go and what you want to learn about. So please don't feel pressured to do any of this. But I thought, an interesting thing that we did some research on our most recent cohort. And we were basically doing a bit of research on, what are the knock-on effects of what's happened since doing the course. So what we found has helped a lot of people kind of put this into perspective is, we basically just kind of highlighted 2 different general coaching fees. So for those in Hong Kong, this is about 500 Hong Kong dollars an hour, which is a kind of on the lower end of personal training fees. And this one's 1,000. But we found that if you can acquire a new client, right, then in 14 sessions at $1,000 or $125 a session, you actually pay off your whole cohort. And those who are charging a bit less for their PTs, in 26 sessions, you pay off all your funds and you start making a return. So I really see this as an investment yourself. So yeah, these are just some rough breakdowns on how long it would take you to do it. So guys, if you are interested, if you're like, this sounds interesting, I'd like to learn more, the first thing I would say is, please reach out to me. We also offer free coaching calls. So we offer a free 50-minute call where Chris, one of our team members, can help you guys kind of answer any questions on your own coaching careers, kind of where you want to go. And if we just basically try and give you as much value as possible, we're definitely not pushing you to try and sign up to the cohort. Maybe the cohort is not actually the best thing for you, but you guys are interested in talking to one of our team about your coaching career, maybe what you're struggling with and where you can take it. Please definitely do take us up on that call because we love doing it. Yes, and that's it. Yeah, absolutely no pressure at all, guys. Main objective for today was to just meet all you guys. I love talking about programming. I'm really passionate about this kind of stuff. And so this really just, makes me very happy doing this kind of stuff. So I really appreciate you guys all joining me on the call. Great to see some new faces. Great to see some familiar faces. I'm actually going to ask everyone to turn on their camera so I can take a photo of everyone. Is that all right, everyone? Okay, so Mav, Barbara, if you don't mind, I would love to see your faces so we can have a quick quick photo. No pressure. Okay, guys, ready? 3, 2, 1. Legends. Oh, Barbara, you were late. I've got to do another one. Sorry, Barbara's here now. One more, guys. Starting in 3, 2, 1. Team, thank you so much. I hope you guys got some value from that. I hope it helped you. Again, if you have more questions, please feel free to reach out to me.
I'll put my head on that. Thank you so much. You are free to leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.